Afternoon. My name is Markos. I'm the founder, publisher, Daily Kos. Anybody see Bill O'Reilly last night? Any chance? He's the most popular show on cable. Nobody here saw it. I didn't either. But, thanks to the wonders of YouTube, I found out that yesterday he said I was no different than the KKK. There's no more hateful group than the Daily Kos group. And Al Gore just spoke at our our national conference last week, and so he'd lost respect, and he'd lost all respect for Al Gore. Because we knew that Bill O'Reilly was in Al Gore's corner the entire time. And but it was sort of instructive because it sort of shows that Daily Kos really is one of the most impactful organizations right now in the sort of progressive sphere. It drives Bill O'Reilly crazy, and all his little clones, and Sean Hannity's, and Karl Rove's went on a rant against the work we're doing at Daily Kos. And ultimately, I would argue that Daily Kos is probably one of the most influential organizations in sort of driving the media narrative and trying to shape the direction that the broader traditional media covers information. And all of this is done on a budget of less than $1 million a year, which I thought was a hell of a lot of money from where I came, and apparently not so much. Now, I say all of this not because I want to brag about Daily Kos or its accomplishments. I think, I believe very strongly that the organization and the work we do speak for themselves. But because I want to sort of talk about where I came from and how this organization started, and make a broader point about sort of where we're going as a movement and the democratizing nature of technology. I was born in Chicago, but grew up in El Salvador. I lived there till 1980, when the war forced my family to come back to the United States as essentially refugees, packed everything they owned into a station wagon, drove all the way through Guatemala, through Mexico, got into Texas. We still had all our stuff. First night in Texas, it was all stolen. So my parents struggled for years, from 80 to 89. I graduated high school in 89. They struggled, but they were very much, unlike, unfortunately, many in my community, in the Latino community, they actually were very much focused on education. So they did what they could to make sure that we were always properly educated. I was a political junkie from an early age, and I wanted subscriptions to both the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times, and they got both. And it wasn't until college where I realized that newspapers are expensive. So you sort of, when you grow up, you sort of start realizing the sacrifices your parents made. But they made a lot of sacrifices, but they couldn't really afford for me to go to college. They didn't need to. I joined the Army. I did my training in Oklahoma, served in Germany between 1989 and 1992 during the first Gulf War, and came back, and thanks to the GI Bill, thanks to the state of Illinois, I was able to get my undergraduate education at a very average, nondescript state school called Northern Illinois University. I got two degrees. I had 3 majors in philosophy, political science, journalism. I had a minor in German for good measure. In 4 years. Suck it, 4 years. I had a lot of work. I was working full-time at my school newspaper, and I was stringing for the Chicago Tribune. I thought I wanted to be a journalist. Realized at the very, very last minute that I didn't want to be the person writing about the people doing stuff. I actually wanted to be one of the people doing stuff. I didn't know what that was going to be, though. So I needed 3 years to kill, and I couldn't think of a better way to do so than law school. And so I went to Boston University, where I spent 3 years, essentially courting my soon-to-be wife. And law school was sort of a secondary consideration. I was never a very good law student. And came out in 1999 to the Bay Area to make my .com millions. Now, if anybody here knows the area, 1999 was about 3 years too late. So my timing was a little bit off. But I had all these, I ended up at a web development shop here in San Francisco. So I had this sort of mismatch of skills, my legal training, my journalism training, my international experience, and no real direction for it to go. And even a little bit of a technology fetish. I'm very much, I wanted to be a programmer, but it never was good at it. But I'm one of the few people who wanted to be a programmer. and was angry that I couldn't be that person. I wanted to be a nerd. And so 2002 rolls around, and this was a very difficult time to be a progressive. Some of you may remember. Or you may have blocked it out. 2002, we have the aftermath of the Afghanistan war, which had gone reasonably well, but it was a time of political oppression. We were not allowed to criticize the president because it would be showing disunity and weakness to the enemy, and we needed to be united. And it didn't matter what the issue was. It wasn't about being united on the war in Iraq or Afghanistan, but it was on domestic issues. And it was about this upcoming war with Iraq, which was suddenly starting to be fairly clear and obvious on the horizon. And as I looked out in the media landscape for voices that were sort of expressing what I was feeling, there were absolutely none. Nothing. If they wanted to put an anti-war voice up there, they put in Janine Garofalo. And I love Janine, but she'll be the first to say that they did that on purpose to marginalize anti-war voices, because the only people who would be opposed to this war would be Janine Garofalo, right? Comedians, not serious people. And you had these so-called liberals in our punditry, people like Joe Klein and Richard Cohen, telling us with their little furrowed brows, that serious people knew that Saddam Hussein's a threat. And a lot of us would look at the information and at the evidence, and we'd say, we think we're serious, but this does not add up. Well, that's because you're a commie. That's because you're a hippie. You're as we in the blog world like to call them, dirty fucking hippie. We were just dirty fucking hippies. And you had Tom Friedman, who of course was supposed to be another so-called liberal. He went on Charlie Rose, and he said, well, maybe Iraq doesn't really have a direct connection to 9/11, but we need to show the Arabs, we need them to see Americans kicking down their doors and shoving a rifle in their face and saying, suck on this.